Hi, you're listening to the NewSpace India podcast, a bi weekly talk show that exclusively brings insights from the Indian space activities ecosystem. I'm your host, Narayan, the co founder of India's first space focused think tank, Spaceport Sarabhai. Guests on the NewSpace India podcast help you understand space activities related macro and micro trends within India in all aspects, including space history, local industry, space science, technology evolution, law and policy, art, and more. The NewSpace India podcast is supported by Dassault Systèmes, a global leader in providing businesses and people with collaborative virtual environments to enable sustainable innovations. Dassault Systèmes solutions support startups, small and medium-scale enterprises, and original equipment manufacturers in developing disruptive solutions for space launchers and satellites.
Hello everyone, hope you're having a great day and welcome to another episode of NewSpace India. Now, I bet a lot of you are wondering, why does NP sound a bit different? I am Divya Kalabhavani and I'm here with the four founders of Dhruva Space. Guys, let's go around a bit and have a quick introduction of each of you.
Hi, this is Sanjay Shrikant Nekanti. I'm one of the founders and also the CEO of the company.
Hello everyone, this is Abhay Egur. I'm the CTO and director at Dhruva Space.
I'm Krishna Teja Penamakuru. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Dhruva Space.
Hey, I'm Chaitanya Dora. I'm the CFO and founder at Dhruva Space.
Also, Dora, the explorer of the team.
Good one. Now, as a full-stack space engineering company, Dhruva Space undertakes building, launching, and operating of satellites while supporting civilian and defense clients worldwide. Now, getting a bit more specific, you guys indigenously design, develop, and test products and services. These are satellites, satellite orbital deployers, Earth station, and space-grade solar arrays. Now, in less than a year since attaining authorization from InSpace in June 2022, Dhruva Space has gone to space 3 times, with a lot planned ahead, including the setup of an assembly, integration, and testing facility. It's quite exciting. Now, you guys are really living up to the adage, strike while the iron is hot. Can you talk about the need to not just move fast, but also frequently in an equally fast-paced ecosystem? I know opening this up to all 4 of you guys, picking your brains here.
I think you got it right. We have to be fast and frequent, but one thing which we have to take care is we have to be accurate. It's great to be out in space, great to have many missions and taking care of our technology from all angles, but it's absolutely essential that we got every part of this technology right, which is scalable, which is durable, which can actually take our company as well as what we can serve to others. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think what we have achieved in the last 1 year is just a reiteration of the core ethos, which is we want to build satellites faster, we want to have satellites in orbit reliably, perform there for at least a few years. And most importantly, we should be in a position to refresh the satellites with newer technologies every few years. So that's where we are heading right now. So we have validated our smallest satellite platform, the PDOT. We have validated our ability to launch fast using our satellite orbital deployers. We've validated our capabilities to operate satellites from anywhere in the world using a network of ground stations. The next phase, which is extremely important for us, is how do we scale from here? So customers will play a very important role. Partners will play an extremely important role. And most importantly, the ecosystem in India needs to have the ability to multiply what we have built very quickly. And hence the satellite manufacturing facility is planned right now. The idea is we want this facility to act as a capacity multiplier for not just us, but also for global OEMs, so that they can all leverage what India has to offer for the global market. 1, which is talent. 2, the cost at which we could produce. 3, partnerships between India and global players to create something outstanding. I think I would be the right person to actually talk more about what the facility has in store for the global market.
Yeah, I think taking off from where Sanjay left, I think one very critical point that we did mention is the way that we have capitalized or utilized the existing ecosystem within the country. If you look at the initial missions that we've done, the first two satellites that we have flown and also the separation systems, very proud to say that almost about 90% of the entire subsystems or the entire systems were fabricated and tested using the Indian ecosystem. And we have been able to do this without investing very heavily ourselves into the infrastructure within our own facility. Moving on from here, what we now see is the potential for us to scale a lot of these products to the global market from whom we have been getting consistent and in fact with increased frequency or various inquiries or interest for our product line. This includes across the spectrum, like we've been talking about the separation systems, the platform itself, as well as more specifically the space grade solar arrays or solar panels. So from all this inputs that we have received, now we think the time is right for us to consolidate all the manufacturing or more specifically the bottlenecks that we see within our current ecosystem under one roof, which now we have laid the foundation for just a few weeks back. So this particular facility is going to cater to a very dedicated shop floor for manufacturing or fabrication of space-grade solar panels, and more importantly, the testing of these panels, which is an extremely critical step towards building a reliable system and then delivering it to our end customers. Along with this particular facility, we are also commissioning a huge assembly, integration, and testing facilities where satellite platforms beyond what our current facility can handle, which is about 100 kg class of satellites, that can be assembled, integrated, and tested under one floor before it's shipped out to the launch pad. So this is something that we have in store and hope to be open to the global market in the next 18 to 24 months.
Yeah, I definitely believe that in the last 1 year, we've done 3 missions all on the PSLV with the success of LV, and most importantly, LVM3, which has launched the OneWeb satellites. I believe that in the next 18 to 24 months, we would be in a position to look at offering a full launch vehicle capable of deploying thousands of satellites into the low Earth orbit. Yeah, pretty excited.
Yeah, never say never. And I think we've talked a lot about the use of satellites in various capacities over the year, but I think I'm seeing a lot of growing interest in the market of separation systems as well. And the fact that Dhruva Space qualified 3 classes of its deployers. Abhay, can you elaborate on the growing demand there in different classes of separation systems? Because it's not something that we talk about a lot. We've talked about satellites a lot, but I'd like to understand more, our audiences to understand more on the separation systems demands.
Yeah, this is one segment that we've taken. It's a very interesting and evolving sector, which is to be able to launch thousands of satellites that they are expected to be launched over the next decade. So we've been seeing satellites that are built in standard form factors, as you're very well aware, the regular CubeSat standards, which range all the way from a 1U size to up to 12U, and now we're talking also about 16U satellites that have been launched of late for various applications. While they started more as academic missions, today we see quite a few commercial missions that are being designed using these standard platforms. Now, if you look at let's take an example of a constellation player who intends to launch about 200 odd satellites of these form factors into orbit over the next 18 months. Now, sticking to one particular launch provider is going to be counterproductive towards reaching their own timelines to be able to deploy these satellites in the specific orbits they intend to. What Dhruva intends to do is to capture this particular requirement by being able to design these separation systems to be launch provider or launch vehicle agnostic, in the sense that they are compatible with multiple launch providers that are out there today. And we do the heavy lifting of being able to qualify our deployers, integrate them with these folks, and the satellite manufacturer themselves need not worry about any of this, thus giving them a wide range of launch opportunities. So this is one market that is growing, and we hope to be right there to capture this.
Just to add on to what Abhay mentioned, one increasing trend that we are seeing is almost all new entrants are looking at CubeSats for doing their technology demonstration missions, and later on transitioning from CubeSats to doing nanosatellites or microsatellites, which not necessarily adhere to the CubeSat standard. So that is where I believe there is a huge need for supporting various spacecraft configurations to be launched in the form of a constellation on a variety of launch vehicles. And to that effect, our approach is that on the CubeSat separation systems, we've already established ourselves with space heritage. On the nano and microsatellite separation systems, we are looking at doing licensed production of separation systems in India. And when it comes to deployment of huge constellations, I think our focus would be on developing multi-stage launch adapters that can deploy these constellations of satellites on a variety of launch vehicles. We are in our initial phases of forming these global partnerships for licensed production of separation systems, but I think there will be some announcements very soon on that.
Quite literally taking watch this space very seriously. I think Katie's just mentioned in the beginning a little bit about accuracy. You talked about design requirements as well. It made me think about product design as a really important vertical that as a full stack operator, we really have to think about. What are kind of the, the ups and downs of product design for being a full stack company? Because it's a lot. And where do you kind of draw the line there? And how do you know when to diversify and when not to? Because it seems like you guys are handling a lot.
If I can, I won't talk too much about the product, but just to give a bit of background, in the last 4 years, more than 100 people must have said you guys are trying to do a lot. So our first real exposure out in the world right after COVID was where we showcased a lot of prototypes of the products. By then we had some products ready, but just this thing. People were like, okay, this is a good problem you're trying to solve, but it's going to be pretty tough. And in subsequent meetings, with the same set of people, we've actually shown that what we promised back in the IAC meetings, we're actually executing it. They're now out there, reaching the market. We're just trying, next step is just scaling up. Right. So we've proven it, but I'll let Abhay or Katie talk more about actual product development, but that's more of a perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a choice which we have made willingly. So if you're looking at talent pool or what are the challenges, one is the technology and the second one is engineering, what resources are available to us. So if you look at mission design, then engineering, which is building the satellite or the deployer or the ground station, and then finally the operations to manage such huge number of satellites seamlessly and provide solutions. So there are three different aspects which we have to take care while we are building this entire solution. From the people point of view, from the availability of talent pool point of view, I think we are covered. India has a good resource pool, so we are not in dearth of any engineers to solve the problem. So we are very well taken care there. In terms of manufacturing capability, thanks to ISRO and DRDO, we have a very well-built ecosystem out there, which has been nurtured and meticulously taken care of for the past few decades. So what we have is a very completely shine diamond. So we are just utilizing this ecosystem to build on top of it. And if there is anything missing, we are trying to fill in those blocks and cater to our clients. So as far as the full stack point of view, we have the capability. When I say we, I'm saying any company in India can think in those angles to provide this solution. If you're looking at a specific problem which we are trying to adhere, for a lot of people, when they launch satellites, ground station is an afterthought. They don't even think of ground stations when they are doing a mission design. They feel that we can work with a ground station provider way down the lane, way down when we have decided, when we are probably about to launch, we can discuss on what we have to do on the ground end. But anyone who has been through the entire mission, they know that you can optimize really well when you have the entire thing in your hand. You can build your satellite which matches very well with your ground station. You can build your ground station which matches very well with your satellite constellation. So getting all these three things together, ground, space, and launch would give you a flexibility like no other person. So you can build a solution which is really optimal and solving the problem. So we were all four of us at least were on the same page when we decided, say, we have to do all three together. We have to be a full stack company to provide a solution.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think there was a lot of thought that went into doing what we are doing today. At the end of the day, if you don't get your product right and product market fit right, then you're probably at a loss, right? So I think we spent a lot of time trying to understand what technologies we need to work on, what technologies we have to build in-house. At the same time, understand what the market needs, and then some of our products. So we have PDOT platform, which is catering to new entrants who want to do like a technology demonstration mission. Yet at the same time, a large enterprise customer could launch a constellation of these satellites to have their own decentralized network for secure communications or relaying sensor data, especially for IoT applications. When it comes to the P30 variant, which is more like a mid variant of our satellite platforms, which usually has a lifetime of about 3 to 5 years, we try to have numerous conversations with customers, not just within India, but a lot of players across different continents to arrive at a baseline configuration which will serve their immediate purpose, but at the same time gives them the flexibility to scale, offering enterprise value and value also for defense and military customers. So this is still in the works. This is a platform for which we already have customers, which we will probably be doing a technology demonstration mission later this year and also early next year. But if I were to draw a parallel against how we have grown, on the PDOT platform, we built the satellite, we launched the satellite, and at the same time, we had customers. For the P30, we were able to get customers while we were already developing the product. So we can already see that customers, not just within India, but outside of India, value what we are building, which validates our hypothesis, which is having a product fit, having a product market fit. At the same time, also figure out the scalability aspect where the customers who are signing up with us today can trust us that 24 months down the line, if they have to roll out tens or dozens of satellites every few months, the facility will cater to those requirements. So I think that way it's been super fun building it, and the journey is still on.
Yeah, I think I see that's where the customer development model that you guys have has been really working very well so far for you. And it's interesting that we both talked about the Indian space economy, how we can, all the kind of different startups, entities, government entities as well, have been all working in harmony to really further India as a space nation. How do you guys see the Indian space economy changing the world? Like, what ripple effect do you guys see there? I'd like to hear from all of you.
That question took us, we are just collecting our thoughts, all of us were silent. Space economy. Okay, I think let's just talk about some what ISRO has done so far. I think, like I mentioned before, the ecosystem which ISRO has built has laid a foundation like no other. So we are at a place where we can practically build an entire satellite or a constellation and launch them out of a single city. We did everything from our own city, from Hyderabad. And from India, we'll be able to provide solutions without having to go anywhere else. So that's like a huge resource at your disposal for any company, any startup, or even a big company to have it, so that you can build your applications. Now, what India is turning towards, according to me, probably I think Sanjay or Dhruva might have a better opinion. But what I see is now Indian companies are at a position where they are thinking not just about manufacturing, not just about building stuff, but they are trying to think of solutions, offerings, design as part of their offerings. That changes a lot. The moment you stick to only the manufacturing part of things or build to print, so that's where it restricts your scope. But now I see there's a fundamental change in how companies are thinking. Now people are thinking about providing EO solutions from from India, their companies are thinking like us. We are trying to provide a full stack solution. We're not just saying we'll manufacture for your designs. We are trying to provide a full stack solution to whoever is coming to us. So that's something which will change a lot from how India is going to be looked at going forward in the space side of things. So far, it's been ISRO at the forefront. Now, I think ISRO and Indian government, the entire ecosystem is enabling private players to take the mantle and take it much forward. So, yes.
Currently, I think India is less than 2% of the space ecosystem, the share across the world. Right, but that is rapidly changing primarily because it's not just ISRO who is now looking at supporting the whole ecosystem, the global ecosystem, but also the private players. And I must also say that the government has been pretty encouraging in this aspect. NSIL, ISRO, NewSpace, they've been so helpful in moving things forward, especially in the last, I'd say, 1 year, because the first two missions that we did, I think there's a lot of build up to it. We had to put in our applications a long time. There was a lot of back and forth in setting up the procedures. But the April mission that we did, I think we started the mission only in January. Yeah. That's just a 4-month period during which, again, ISRO, NSIL and NewSpace have helped us get necessary permissions in place, helped us integrate everything into the rocket, supported us. Of course, we had to be thorough in ensuring that every test, or we had to be sure this is exactly what we're launching out there, and this is how we're testing. We are making sure everything is safe from our perspective. So we've done our job, and we had that support which was not there. So now there are so many industries that were disrupted the moment India entered into the industry, be it pharma, be it IT. So now you can expect the same amount of disruption that is going to come out of India, and all the forces to drive it in the right direction are in place.
Yeah, I think space policy being announced, we take it as one of the very watershed moment, if I may say so, in terms of defining the various roles of the entities that have been in existence for quite some time, and the roles being defined for each of them to remove whatever ambiguity that was there running till the policy was released. So this, I think, Dhruva has very clearly elaborated on the impact of that and the contribution that you'd start seeing from the Indian private sector. Having said that, I think if you're talking on a larger scale in terms of what kind of impact we would start playing at a global scale, there are two things. One, within the domestic market, we strongly feel that along with our fellow peers and fellow colleagues across in the Indian private space ecosystem, we shall start seeing the local demand on the downstream side also being serviced by the companies that are within India. In a way, today, if let's say we are procuring the services from an international company, we will slowly start seeing this particular demand being offsetted or being serviced by the Indian companies themselves. This could be both government related or enterprise as well. So this is one disruption that we would start seeing very soon, where we'll be talking about our own constellation, etc. Number two is capturing a significant pie of the global supply chain and bring it to India. This is already being done at various levels, but considering the overall landscape change of a lot of companies moving towards constellations, the number of satellites themselves increasing, we will start seeing that a good chunk of supply chain or India being looked at a very critical supply chain partner in a global scheme of things. I think in both these fronts, multiple of our private startups and companies that have been in existence for quite some time will start making their presence felt.
Yeah, I think from my side, I agree to what Katie, Abhay and Dhruva just mentioned. But in addition to all of this, what I believe is going to be a welcome change is I think there will be more number of cross-border activities that will happen, with several countries, wherein India, ISRO, the Indian MSME ecosystem and the startup ecosystem will start working with players around the world to develop technologies that can improve the life of people on Earth. India has a huge potential for using satellite-based services. To be very honest, I think in the current scheme of things, I think ISRO has developed amazing applications for people to use, especially various state governments. I think there is tremendous amount of value still to be created where users can start using satellite as an enabler for their own use cases. It could be several use cases across various spectrums. It could be towards device management. It could be towards Internet of Things. It could be towards different types of new services, also across entertainment, across observing weather. While these are things that are very much needed for the country, I think at the same time, the ability for companies to think very big is going to increase significantly. I think in this decade or in the coming decade, people will definitely be going back to the moon. And I'm very sure that there will be technologies that Indian companies will develop for people to explore beyond Earth and also in Earth, where human spaceflight could actually become a common thing. So I think now is definitely an exciting time for Indian entrepreneurs, generally even the Indian community, to look at collaborating with foreign players and also looking at the space sector more seriously.
Interesting. And we're looking at the ecosystem as being very rich and storied right now. There's so many things happening in tandem. How do the four of you recommend or suggest that companies across the gamut, across industries, take advantage of this greater access to space and also pursue emerging use cases? For example, industries that maybe don't traditionally go to space. Let's look at pharma, as Laura mentioned. There's so many different ways that people are using satellite data, for example, or even various spacecraft.
Yeah, maybe I think I can just quote an example. When I was in college and we were building satellite, we went to ISRO and there were a lot of scientists who were giving an address to us, and we were trying to figure out how do we build a satellite and all of that. And then one of the scientists goes on and says, guys, I think you all can think in a very innovative way. You have to just come up with an idea which is out of the box. And he goes on to say, why can't a mobile phone work in space? It's just that nobody thinks about it. But deep down, if you go and just ask ourselves these questions, I think there's a lot that remains unexplored. And I believe that is where we find the answers to several of these questions. Also, when it comes to some of our product development, I think there were moments where Dora and Katie, both of them are very good gamers. And there was this question on why can't we just fly a GPU in orbit? And we could use a GPU to crunch data and come up with some useful feedback. At the same time, looking at some random stuff and then, not so random, some Instagram videos, and we came across a mechanism that is used in a car. And then we thought, hey, you know what? Why can't we just use this as a unfurlable mechanism in orbit? So I think these are some of the things that inspired us, or some of these conversations made us look at things differently. And that one thing led to the other. Maybe Katie can add more.
Yeah, I'm looking at this slightly different from just the Indian perspective. Probably, I think Dhruva and Sanjay can add to this. Usually for any company coming up, like same as us, we had three major problems. One is the technology, second is the financial part of it, third is the policy part of it. Technology side, as a private company, we have to handle it using the ecosystem. Let's say, put that aside. Then we are left with policy and finance. Policy side, I want to just share an experience. Like for our recent mission, which Dhruva mentioned before, we started in Jan and we closed all the regulatory work needed for the April mission. That's 4 to 5 months we closed everything. That wouldn't be possible without government, ISRO, and the necessary bodies, whoever are there. Without their support, we wouldn't have been able to achieve that. There have been instances where the following up from their side to us was more than what we were trying to reach out. So that's a lot of change in what's been the case in 2012, 2015 to what it is now. So there's no chance of any excuse on saying the policy is being formed or we do not have necessary resources. So that's something we cannot say anymore. So that's all already taken care of. And in terms of finance, I think Sanjay have been the forefront while we are doing the fundraise. And in 2018-19, we are doing it. I think they have met more than around 150 investors. 150 investors before we got our first set of investors who have accepted and invested in us. But now I think that also has changed. There are a lot more investors, are a lot more inviting, and they're a lot more understanding about the space sector has increased. Yeah, that has been amazing. That's been a real pleasant experience for us because things are changing and moving the right direction as a domain as a whole. Yeah, probably Dhruva want to add a bit about that.
Yeah, I'll just go back to the where we started off. That when we're talking about different industries that can leverage space, while we do not want to get into that right away from our side, I think the platform that we're building really is going to support that whole idea, right? So if someone has a creative idea on how to use space, all they need to do is support us with the payload and work with us on the idea, and our whole end-to-end platform is putting things out there. So we've actually we talked to quite a few companies that are trying to do interesting stuff in space. Like you mentioned earlier, pharma drug development from space. So it's a concept that's been there since early 1990s, but it's now kicking off because it's actually viable in terms of the pricing, because we are actually being able to bring down a lot of pricing across the board, and it makes sense for us to do it and take that risk. Similarly, there's a lot of environmental. I think Sanjay was talking to a company just 3 days back that is environment focused, trying to derive data from space for that purposes. So yeah, that's where we are coming in, where we really would be excited, and it also supports our own business model in the sense where people come up with innovative, even wacky ideas on how to use space.
Yeah, that's a really good sum up. But I think just also to give the listeners a perspective, I think we should never forget that space is part of our daily life. We just don't appreciate it enough. If you're watching the television, it is powered by a satellite. If you're communicating with somebody, it's powered by a satellite. If you're ordering food and there's a home delivery that is happening, there is a satellite involved indirectly, right? So directly or indirectly, space has been part of everyone's life. A lot of technologies that we use on Earth today have all been invented in space at some point in time. But a huge opportunity that exists today is with the miniaturization of electronics, and a lot of interesting technologies that have been developed on Earth can now actually enhance our capability to explore space very differently. So if there were a lot of technologies that were invented in space that found applications on Earth, today could be a trend reversal where a lot of technologies developed on Earth might just directly work in space without much modifications. So leveraging these capabilities to build something extraordinary is what a lot of new space companies are trying to do. Of course, that is also something that we are trying to do, where we could also act as enablers, where people with extremely creative ideas can leverage our platforms to do something meaningful in space.
So we've talked about the space, we've talked about the launch, now to talk about the ground. I'm sure Katie's very excited, as I can see quite well. So where do you see the ground segment headed in the next 5 to 10 years, Katie? Because for people to truly own a space asset, it requires that particular segment, and to really understand what that particular segment can actually do and how it operates. For me, it's a very complex topic. I'm reading up as much as I can on it, but I'll leave it to you to the expert, to break it down and really define the main engine of growth for the ground segment.
Yeah. So on the ground side of things, I'll put it this way. I think currently, or even few years back, when we look at things, people were having like 7.5 meter dish, 11 meter dishes, these huge antennas which were talking to their satellites and getting your data down. That there is one change that is happening where because of the satellites which are being more agile they are on the LEO side, they are 500 kilometers distance. There is some innovation happening on the ground segment where the dish sizes can come down to 5.4, 3.8 meters, etc. That reduces your cost and complexity and still address the same issue, provide some data rates and give data down to the user. This is not just happening at the antenna end, even on the receiver side. People traditionally used to go with baseband equipment, which is very large and costly. And now they are migrating towards SDRs and more virtualization, pushing the data to cloud and for using directly for your applications. So there is a lot of change going on, which is natural, which is gradual, but it's happening throughout, where you are seeing the ground stations are taking more risks. Previously, the ground stations were huge because they wanted to not lose even a bit of data or a byte of data. They wanted to have everything captured. So there is some risk-taking appetite coming into this new age, new space companies, where they want to balance out the cost and the business model along with the product and technology, and they want to come up with the solutions. So that's changing the ground station landscape by quite a bit. And then you have opticals and few other technology side developments which are happening, which will enable data rates to go up to 500 megawatts, 1 Gbps, which is happening even now. So even greater than that. So that's not a dream anymore. It's happening quite as a reality as we speak. So the change has been quite a lot. Now we have to see how many constellation players come up in the future, more satellites coming up, how they design the ground stations. And yeah, with these things in mind, I think Dhruva is heavily invested into the ground station side. We believe ground stations will play a key role in providing an entire solution for any client. So yeah, we are investing heavily into it.
Yeah. Just to add on to what Katie mentioned, I think if there's one area which has not gotten a breakthrough change, I would say that is the ground station domain. I think there are slowly a lot of changes that are happening in the ground station domain. One important factor that will let things remain as it is for at least some more time is that a lot of existing satellites already use legacy technologies, and it is a little difficult to go back and change those technologies. I think at least in the foreseeable future, we would see that the change across the ground station spectrum will slowly, the changes in the ground station vertical will not happen suddenly, but it will happen slowly over a long period of time. And our approach to that is in this particular ground segment vertical, where to our users, we want to provide data from our satellites at the fastest possible time. We are very closely watching the sector involve and are very selectively investing in technologies that will transform the ground station vertical. So some of the areas that are of great interest to us is optical communication, inflatable antennas, phased array antennas, and software-defined radios. In addition to this, I think cloud and data processing on the cloud will be an extremely important sector to track. So while we are not looking at offering our own cloud service, we are trying to work with some of the very large corporations to see how their innovation on cloud computing and newer algorithms, especially in AI, can have an implication on the quality of service that we provide to our users.
Wonderful. And I think it's interesting that we've covered these three very important segments of Dhruva's offerings. And I think one of the key questions that we get, whether off record or on record, is capital for something like this, right? Now, and I think one key phrase that we've been using a lot is capital efficient. I really want to kind of dive into that because I want to bust some myths there, guys, because there's a lot of expectations and reality kind of memes about all of these things. But what does it really mean to be, you're in the new space economy, which you don't just have to be very savvy about the innovation and the tech. You also have to be very savvy about the business. You have to be very savvy about the resources. So when we talk about capital efficiency, when we talk about making sure that you provide your full stack in a very cohesive way, can we open the discussion about what this means on the business side of it? How do we get capital efficient? What do you see capital efficiency in the new space economy as?
Yeah, India is the most capital efficient space exploration enterprise, I would say. It has always been talked about that, right? So we are just building on that.
Yeah, I think at our company, we have a simple policy. We just go to Dhruva and say, "Hi, Dhruva, we need money." And he says no. And then we have to build our case around it.
Thank you for listening in to this episode of the NewSpace India podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share this episode with anyone you believe will enjoy listening to it. You'll be able to find the NewSpace India podcast in any of the podcasting platforms that you may be using, including Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and others. Do subscribe to the podcast in case you want to receive new episodes automatically. I'm grateful if you're able to leave a rating for the podcast, which will help others discover it. Thank you for listening in again, and the next episode will be out in the next 2 weeks as usual.